2022 meeting of the City of Raleigh Appearance Commission. My name is Chris Roberts and I am chair of the commission. The Raleigh Appearance Commission is a public body appointed by the City Council that exercises both advisory and quasi-judicial functions. The Appearance Commission's responsibilities relate to zoning and other land use matters, as well as the visual quality and aesthetic characteristics of the city. Today's agenda includes requests for design alternates from the city's Unified Development Ordinance. When hearing requests for design alternates, the Appearance Commission sits as a quasi-judicial body and conducts an evidentiary hearing on that request. That means it is like a court hearing. State law sets specific procedures and rules concerning how this commission must make its decisions. When hearing quasi-judicial matters, the Appearance Commission has 9 regular members and 6 alternate members. The standard the applicant must meet to be granted the request is set forth in the UDO. The commission hears and considers evidence presented at the hearing and applies the standard when making its decision. The commission must base its decisions upon competent material and substantial evidence presented at the hearing. This meeting is open to the public and everyone is welcome to watch. However, participation in the evidentiary hearing is limited. Parties have rights to participate fully. Parties may present evidence, call witnesses, and make legal arguments. Witnesses may testify as to facts to which they are competent to testify, so long as those facts relate to the legal standards. In addition, lay or non-expert witness testimony is limited to facts, not personal preferences or opinions. For certain topics, the commission needs to hear opinion testimony from expert witnesses. These topics include projections about impacts on property values and projections about impacts on traffic safety. We will now conduct the evidentiary hearings on today's agenda, and the first 2 cases on the agenda are being deferred to later meetings. So we are actually going to fast forward to the 3rd one on the agenda, if I understand that correctly.
And those are being renoticed, right?
Yes, so the 2 cases being deferred are going to be renoticed.
So you don't have to continue to answer.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So we'll now call the case to order. We'll now open the evidentiary hearing for item number 3 on today's agenda. This is for case DA-7-2022 at 300 and 320 Hillsborough Street. Keegan McDonald will introduce this hearing, and before you start, I'll swear you in for today's hearing. Keegan, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
All right, thanks very much. So this project is related, or this design alternate case, is related to a project for a 20-story mixed-use building located at the intersections of West Edenton, North Dawson, and Hillsborough Streets, as you can see here. This is the site of the existing Holiday Inn, and so it will be a mixed-use building with, I believe, a hotel component. For your reference, and so this is just some images from the Dawson-Eaton intersection, kind of showing the bounds of the property, and then from the Hillsborough and Dawson intersections, showing the kind of other corner there. And so this is obviously a multi-part request. I'm going to attempt to break it down a little bit. There are a number of transportation-related items, which I will defer to the applicant and then transportation with any follow-up questions, but I'll just provide a breakdown for you. I did want to note that the specific measurements are included in the materials in the actual application, so you won't find them in the staff report kind of breakdown, but you will find them in the application if you are curious as to what those specific measurements are for particularly the transportation and transparency related requests. So with that, essentially this case can be broken down into a few different code sections, one related to driveway spacing. And so if you bear with me, I'm going to kind of pull up the actual site plan just to spotlight these various conditions for you, just so you have some reference point moving through my presentation and the applicants. But there are 5 driveway to driveway spacing issues. First, between driveways 1 and 2, so you can see those at the bottom left of the image on the screen. Then between driveways 1 and 3, so driveway 3 is sort of the connecting point to driveway 2. Between driveways 2 and 3 themselves, And also, if you move to the northern part of the site between driveway 4 and the 2 driveways towards the west on adjacent properties. So again, there's 5 driveway to driveway spacing issues at play. Next, there are driveway to intersection spacing concerns. So one being driveway 4, again at the northern part of the site, and its spacing between the spacing between driveway 4 and North Dawson, and also between driveway 3 and North Dawson down here. There is also a request related to driveway 4, the width of driveway 4. The code sets forth the maximum width of 32 feet. As you can see, they're proposing 38 feet for driveway 4. And then the last transportation related request is cross access to this parcel that immediately abuts the subject property to the west. And that's the last 4 digits of that pin are 4367. And so those are the transportation requests. As I said, we do have transportation staff available to answer questions, and I know the applicant has a more detailed presentation on that piece. I did want to cover also the 2 other portions of this request that relate to transparency. So there is a transparency relief sought for the ground story along the east elevation, which is along North Dawson Street. And so you can see here the figures, the required transparency percentage versus the provided transparency. And so required 1607, provided 1102 for that ground story. And again, the applicant does have some detailed renderings, but essentially there are along this area, there is a kitchen that's going to be kind of shielded with some spandrel glass that they hope provide a similar effect, but does not meet the explicit regulations for transparency. And also, they are seeking relief along the northern elevation for West Edenton Street, excuse me. As you can see, there are some sort of back of house functions here, particularly the loading dock and also a generator that will be housed. And they are going to be applying a brick lattice application to a portion of that facade to help kind of screen and provide some visual interest. But as noted in the bottom figure, you can see that they are not satisfying the 66% transparency requirement. And this is just more for reference for the Appearance Commission, but the south elevation along Hillsborough will satisfy the transparency requirement, and they just provided this as sort of reference for the group. And did want to run through quickly the findings, and happy to pull these back up later on in the presentation. But essentially there are 3 sections or 3 different sets of findings related to all of these requests. The first for transparency, first finding being that it's consistent with the intent of the requirements, the other being that it utilizes some treatment, be it architectural, artistic, or landscaping, to create visual interest to offset that reduction. The next set relates to blocks, lots, and access. So this specifically deals with those driveway to driveway spacings, cross access, and also that the maximum driveway width requirement. And here you can see those requirements, or excuse me, those findings. First, that consistency and intent statement. The second, that it does not increase congestion or compromise safety. The third being that it does not conflict with any approved project. And the last, that its compliance is deemed, I should say, the design alternate is deemed reasonable due to one of the following, one or more of the following. The physical environment, that it would not meaningfully improve connectivity, that's not compatible with adjacent uses, or that the burden of compliance is not reasonable given the size of the site or intensity of the development. And here are the findings related to the street design manual, and so this would come into play for those driveway to intersection spacing specifically. And so very similar Although I will note, there's also the findings do change once you get to number 3, that it does not create additional maintenance responsibilities for the city, that the approved alternate has been designed and certified by a professional engineer, that the approved alternate will not adversely impact stormwater collection and conveyance, and that the design alternate is deemed reasonable for due to one or more of the following, related to either the physical environment or the burden of compliance in this particular situation. So with that, I'm happy to try and answer any questions if there are any on the facts of the case, but also happy to pass it over to the applicant as they have a pretty detailed presentation with some renderings that were not in my presentation.
Keegan, maybe you hit on this and maybe I missed it, but was there also a request for cross-access?
Yes, there is a request for cross-access, so flip back to the site plan. So this part, apologies. They are requesting cross-access relief to this specific parcel here.
Okay, thanks. Commission members, any questions for Keegan before we get hear from the applicant? All right, very good. And who do we have from the applicant? Oh yeah, is there transportation here?
Yes, we have 2 transportation staff here.
Gotcha. Thanks, guys. Sorry. Now we'll hear from the applicant.
Thank you. Molly Stewart, Morningstar Law Group, 421 Fayetteville Street. I am here this afternoon with Andy Padiak and Jonathan Balderson from McAdams in case we have any detailed engineering questions for them. Do we want to go ahead and swear them in?
Yeah, that'd be great. So if you could, before you begin, please state your name for the record, your address in relation to the case, and then I will swear you in.
Hi, Andy Padiak, McAdams, 1 Glenwood, Raleigh, North Carolina.
And Andy, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thanks.
Hey there, Jonathan Balderson with McAdams. Working with Andy on the engineering group, 1 Glenwood, Raleigh, North Carolina.
Thank you. And Jonathan, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thanks.
Thank you. I'd also like to request that all of our application and presentation materials be admitted to the record.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. So what you see on your screen is sort of the big picture of the project that's proposed here. This is, as Keegan mentioned, a mixed-use project containing a hotel as well as residential use. This represents something new for downtown Raleigh. This is a true luxury hotel option, including a high level of guest services, including a ballroom and meeting facilities, as well as that residential use. Constructing this project in the downtown will prevent users looking for this sort of experience from having to go to the Umstead, to go to downtown Cary, and to actually find these services in downtown Raleigh. Along with this new use comes a new need, and this is a hotel drop-off area. And this is something that's expected of a hotel offering this level of service, where the street-side drop-off could not provide the necessary weather protection or the stacking room necessary for guest arrival, especially for meetings and events. So similar to how Keegan presented these requests, I have done my best to group them into buckets to simplify the many requests that you have in the application. And I'll start with those transportation-related requests that come from the UDO, and these include the distances between driveways as well as that cross-access request. This aerial highlights those 2 driveways on the properties to the west. That property immediately to the west, that's the Taverna Agora. It is the only immediately adjacent property to this site. The site occupies the remainder of the block to the east. On this Edenton Street frontage, the minimum distance between driveways is 200 feet, and we have our requests 1 and 2 in the application materials show that we are proposing a 36-foot distance as well as a 99-foot distance to those 2 driveways that exist today. You'll see a little bit later that we also have a request, and it shows here on this diagram, to reduce a little bit the distance over to Dawson. So this site is completely unable to accommodate any driveway that complies with all of these regulations. We've tried to sort of split the difference and keep that driveway away from Dawson. Our requests on Hillsborough Street are a little bit different. Here we have a 300-foot minimum distance between driveways. And you see that mirrored entrance there all the way on the western side of the site. This is the entrance to the hotel parking, as well as that drop-off area that you saw previously. The three requests that Keegan outlined between these three driveways, from 1 to 3, from 1 to 2, and from 2 to 3, those are 74 feet, 171 feet, and 96 feet in distance, respectively. And the big picture discussion on this, this drop-off in these driveways occupied most of our discussion with transportation staff. I'm sure you'll hear from them at some point, and they can tell you a bit more about those conversations. But a major focus of those conversations was about the bicycle and pedestrian experience here, and the concern that additional driveways may interfere with that experience. And so we worked extensively with staff to try to address that. We reached out to the bike and pedestrian community here in Raleigh to understand any concerns there may be. And what we learned was that the major concern was that the existing bike lane on Hillsborough Street is outside of the parked cars, and there was an interest in having parking protected bicycle facilities here on Hillsborough Street, and a concern that a street side drop-off, which would be the alternative to this pull-off drop-off, would have interfered with any future plans to achieve that. And you'll see that in working with that group and with staff, we were able to actually provide a bicycle lane that is above the curb. So actually going one better as far as that is concerned. And we'll show you in a bit some measures that have been taken as well to protect the pedestrian experience. So here I'd like to kind of go through some visuals of this drop-off and how this will work in the real world. So you see the overall picture here, and here this is a good image to see that bike lane above the curb, to see the wide sidewalk, and to see that sheltered area within the drop-off. So the basic design idea was inspired by the Dutch Woonhof idea, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. The idea is, and it usually takes place in a street environment where there's actually sort of pass-through traffic. It could be a dead end as well. But the basic idea there is that it's a shared space for pedestrians and vehicles where everyone has the right of way, and so you don't have sort of cars plowing through there. It's visually clear to drivers that they are sharing the space, and so drivers slow down. These tend to be very safe areas, and so that inspired many of the features that you see here. And so you see, that enhanced furnishing zone, that raised planter, some protective areas, that change in pavement designed to sort of flag for pedestrians that there is something else going on here. Another view from the western end of that entrance. Some directional signage for drivers. Just some clarity. Drivers, there is a moment of a little bit of confusion when they pull in here, which is what slows them down. And so, they'll be looking for that signage and that guidance. And the view from inside, showing that protected area. Bit of a respite for pedestrians on a hot day. This, by the way, actually I'll go back to this one. So if you look at the far end here, we are looking toward Dawson Street here with Hillsborough Street directly out front. And you'll see in some of the future slides that the intended use of that corner, that Dawson and Hillsborough corner, is a restaurant. And so that is going to attract significant pedestrian traffic as well. So this will serve those users as well. So to move on to the cross-access request, this site shows, this relates, by the way, to request number 5 that's in the application. We are seeking complete relief, and as I mentioned, this Taberna Agora site is the only adjacent neighbor, the only place where the requirement would have applied. And you can see that up on the Hillsborough Street side is where the restaurant is located. There's no possibility for cross-access there. And looking toward the Edenton Street side at the back, this area simply doesn't meet the intent of cross-access. That is not a customer-facing area. That's a service area used primarily by trucks. So not terribly compatible with the users of that entrance to our site, which would be the entrance and exit from the residential portion of the building, as well as the loading area and the trash pickup. And just to remind you, that is the location there on the left in the pink. So that's the loading dock area. And to describe a little bit more about why that cross-access wouldn't work in this location, this is what that area looks like inside the building. So if you are coming in from the Taberna Agora site, that ramp goes up pretty quickly. So you're having to enter the site immediately next to the street, right where the cars are entering and exiting the building, creating quite a bit of confusion at that location, difficulty in making the turning movements necessary to go in either direction here. So very complicated, as well as we've got that loading dock use and sort of trucks making 3-point turns. Just not a lot of upside here to bring in those trucks servicing the Taberna Agora through this already complicated area. To move on to the transparency requests, we'll start with our Edenton Street facade here. And this image that you see, I wanted to make it readable, so I blew it up as much as possible. Immediately to the right of where it says parking, that is that actual open entrance area where the driveway is. So that area is the only area that would not be considered transparent. All those other areas that look like windows are true windows. The area that is marked parking, that is the area that would have this lattice work in the brick. So that achieves a couple of goals. One, to improve the visual aspect of that section of the building, to make it a little bit less dense and blank. And so when you're up close to it, it actually does have some visibility into the site without truly daylighting the loading dock area. Not really desirable for anyone. It also provides additional visibility, so the drivers coming down, exiting from that residential parking deck will be the ones closest to this portion of the wall.
Can you go back and show us on the last image where those bricks are?
They are, let's see, did I miss that? There we go. Yes. I forget, do we do it here? There. So those are the bricks. Whoops. I think I've forgotten how to get rid of those. Well, here. There we go. Okay. So they're in the area marked parking. And the idea is those drivers exiting will be closest to that wall. So as they're coming down the ramp, they will have some visibility out through there if someone is walking in that direction. They will also have spacing toward the other wall because that is the entrance area. So they will be a little bit separated from the western wall of this entrance and exit. So to move on to the Dawson Street side of the building, this one's a little bit hard to see. I'm going to highlight for you these 3 bays. These are the ones at issue here. So the rest of the glass that you see is truly transparent, meeting the transparency requirements. But here, this is where that kitchen is located. As a reminder, those bays over on the left, that's the restaurant. That's the restaurant at the corner of Hillsborough and Dawson. So these other 3 are where the kitchen would need to be located. And in order to maintain visual interest and to maintain the rhythm of the building, what's proposed here is a combination of spandrel glass together with a cementitious material. And you can see that a little bit here on your screen. There's sort of a grayer area in the center of each bay, and that's the cementitious material, so it sort of breaks it up a little bit. The rest of that is the spandrel glass. Oops. And to move on to the request from the Raleigh Street Design Manual, we have the driveway to intersection spacing request as well as the driveway width. So you've seen this a few times. Here you have that request for the 249 feet to the intersection with Dawson along Edenton of our single point of entrance. And here, obviously, we've worked very hard to make it as far as possible from Dawson, as well as to combine our uses into a single access point. Otherwise, the requests would have multiplied today. So we've attempted to minimize that request. This request is number 3 in the application. We also have request number 10. This is the distance between driveway number 3, the closest to Dawson, and Dawson. The required distance here is actually much shorter. It's only 100 feet here, which is why we don't have to include more of these driveways. So this one, the request is for 85 feet rather than 100. And we feel that this is largely offset by that stacking feature of the pull-off as well. If we did not have that pull-off, we would likely have stacking there in the street, causing a larger issue with that intersection. So this is a relatively minor deviation from that standard. And just to, again, look at how that driveway works, in making our request for additional 6 feet of driveway width, that allows us to reduce the number of driveways by 1 and not to have separate driveway as well as loading and trash entrances and exits. That additional 6 feet creates a lot of value here. So in the interest of efficiency, we're hoping to combine those uses. I'd like to note that there are detailed findings on each of the required findings in our application. I'm happy to go through those on request as well, but they are in the record.
Very good.
Thank you.
Is that it? All right, let's see. We'll now hear from anybody, other individuals wishing to provide factual testimony from the public. Is there anybody here from the public that wishes to speak on behalf of this? Hearing none. We go to applicant rebuttal and closing statements. Ms. Stewart, is there anything that you'd like to add? All right, very good. So we'll go through commission questions. We'll circle back to the applicant if they've got anything further, ask staff if they've got anything further, and then we'll close the hearing, go into deliberation. So commissioners, do you have any questions? Who'd like to start?
I was curious how the above curb bike lane will interface with the bike lane on the adjacent parcels.
I asked the same question of our engineers, and so that is part of the site plan. I actually didn't bring that here today, so I don't have that to show you. However, it is perfectly aligned with that existing bike lane, and I will invite whichever engineer would like to address that. Thank you, Jonathan.
So yeah, we switched the existing bike lane and parallel parking on Hillsborough in conjunction with staff. So when you move off of our frontage, and I wish I had a visual, but the parallel parking is closest to the travel lane on westbound Hillsborough, and then you have the bike lane on back of curb, and then the curb and going to pedestrian.
Just a quick follow-up on that. Is the parallel parking being eliminated as proposed?
Along the Hillsborough frontage of these parcels it is. And then on the frontage of Taverna and further west, it's remaining.
And then on the Edenton Street side, in that rendering, it shows what would look like street parking, but in the site plan, it's just the passenger drop-off.
Yeah, the site plan in Keegan's presentation is the previous version. What we're showing here is more of a mixed use. So you have the residential drop-off where the white vehicle is, and then it moves to more of a mixed use loading zone use.
Okay, so no parallel on-street parking proposed on the side of...
Correct.
So help me visualize this bike lane transition again. I'm on my bike. I'm at the old Capitol building on Fayetteville Street, coming down Hillsborough back towards NC State. I pass the Catholic. I think the Catholic Church is right there. As I cross over Dawson, where do I get onto this top of curb bike lane and how?
Let's see if we can see a visual. I'll use what we have on the screen here. So it'll be similar to a pedestrian curb ramp. So it'll ramp up the curb on the radius of the curb when it goes from Dawson down to Hillsborough, and will ramp up, and that's what starts the above curb bike lane. And then as you're traveling west, as you saw in some of these renderings, it's remaining above curb level, and then it'll ramp back down at the frontage, transition to Taverna, and go to a on pavement bike lane, similar to the existing, just switching the parallel and the bike lane orientation.
And what tells me or directs me to make that change in that one block?
That'll be accomplished with striping on the frontage. You see all around the city, and again, I wish we had a visual, but striping that delineates bike from the travel lane.
Gotten one piece of clarification so our curb will actually bump out further than the adjoining curbs, so the bike lane continues straight, if that helps.
Okay, that helps.
That makes sense.
Thank you.
And you don't have a current site plan in this presentation?
I apologize, we did not include that feature. It was not sort of part of our request today, so
Okay.
apologize for that.
I think it's in the staff report, though.
But I think,
There is a site plan. It doesn't show that feature.
gotcha.
This is sort of the image for
Did
that.
I hear that the site plan that we've got in the staff report is not the most current version of the site plan though? Okay.
Yeah, I think this has been worked through with staff, as Molly mentioned, in the last few weeks. So we've come to this conclusion of what you're seeing here on the screen. But the site plan that was showing earlier was more included the travel lanes, the parallel parking, and then the bike lane within the street structure instead of above curb.
So that landscaped area that we see in the bottom right-hand corner is the location where the existing parallel parking is.
That's correct. Yeah. So if we were to draw the existing curb, it would be somewhere back in here. So what we worked with staff on is to, again, focusing on the pedestrian experience along this frontage, as well as the bike and safety of both of those in correlation to the that would be generated by this pull-off. So putting those in a safer place was the goal here.
How wide is the sidewalk, and as it's currently drawn?
The bike or the sidewalk?
The sidewalk.
Sidewalk, I believe, is about 22 feet.
And the current sidewalk is what, 10, 12 feet?
Correct.
Can you talk a little bit more about the greenscape and where the parking spaces currently are?
Yeah, so that is an area that we're working through. There's currently existing trees in this area, but given this layout, it doesn't allow to keep those. So to keep the intent of street trees, really, honestly, we're figuring out what to do with that and working with staff and the developer to determine that in our LA group.
And I'm not necessarily for or against street parking here, but I assume that because of the driveway spacing, the on-street parking just is infeasible.
Not with it, we would have to take away this configuration and put the bike path back into the street to accomplish that.
Okay.
I just want to get really clear on this. So the existing bike lane right now is between the drive lane and the parallel parking on Hillsborough Street, correct?
Between the travel lane and parallel?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct.
And so when you show in this picture the bike lane, I guess I'm confused because it looks like the plants are in the travel lane if the bike lane is going to be directly aligned with the adjacent bike lane. Is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what you're saying.
So we're holding this proposed curb location is the edge of the travel lane, the existing travel lane. And then we're removing the parallel parking.
But the parallel parking is on the other side of the bike lane at the moment. It goes travel lane, bike lane, parallel parking.
So the bike lane might zag a little bit.
Yeah,
north
so
south.
we're just, because the site plan that in the staff report, it shows the bike lane going all the way across, I think, which is an existing condition. And so we're just having trouble trying to figure out how the bike lane isn't going to move
Okay.
to the adjacent property.
Maybe I can offer a little bit of clarity. So, let's see if I can go back. I like this picture, I think. So, if you envision the existing situation with the travel lane, then you have the bike lane, and then you have the parallel parking. So first, we would switch the two, if you can imagine that. So now the bike lane is positioned up against the existing face of curb. And then that's continuous, straight through from block to block. But right across our frontage, instead of having those parallel parks, it's just this landscape area.
So in front of Taverna and in front of Second Empire, is that being changed all the way
Yes.
to the intersection?
We'll switch across the entire block. We'll switch,
Gotcha.
so the bike lane is against, so if you imagine the existing curb is continuous across the whole block.
That clears
And
it.
you start there, and then on our frontage, we plant instead of park.
Yep.
And then, so that's what makes the bike lane so nice and crisp. It's straight through. And then, so basically, the street trees you see on the screen are where the street trees are in the existing condition. Correct. Yep.
More or less.
Yeah, there, and then the sidewalk would be more generous because we happen to have a little space on our project side to accommodate a wider sidewalk.
What about the adjacent blocks? So will it zag 10 feet north through the intersections on either, where it bookends on either block to be the existing condition, or will this flip for the entire length of Hillsborough Street?
For the entire block, the bike lane will be continuously straight. And then when you reach the intersections at either end, there's a jog that occurs to get to it.
Right, but it'll be through the intersection, so it'll be pretty
Okay, so-
gradual.
Correct.
So you're basically just flip-flopping the parallel parking and the bike lane for the entire block on
Correct.
Hillsborough Street. Cool. That was helpful.
While we're on this, Keegan, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that if it's helpful, I can pull up the latest site plan that shows this condition. If it's at all helpful for the discussion, Bradley was able to email
Yeah.
it to me.
Yes.
Yeah, would be
It just
nice
hasn't
to
been
see.
formally submitted, but I realize it's
Sure.
perhaps relevant.
And while
Can we do that?
Yeah, I think so. And I would just say, I mean, if the applicant wants to admit that in the evidence and can confirm it's our most recent site plan, I think you could do that.
Okay.
Okay. Ms. Stewart, can I confirm that you'd like to enter that into the evidence? Yes, please. All right, perfect, thank you. And Keegan, while you're doing that, I would like to hear from transportation staff, maybe next while we're on this, to talk about the intersection at Hillsborough and Dawson and these 3 driveways on Hillsborough Street. And then we can talk about the driveway on Edenton as well, just to get your thoughts. I know you've been working with this applicant a lot to come up with hopefully what you think is the best scenario. But I'd like to hear if you've still got any concerns or what the main issues are in your eyes.
Do I need to state my name for the record?
You do, please. Yep, and I'll swear you in. Go for it.
Marcus Mensa Webb, engineer, City of Raleigh.
And Marcus, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Very good. Thank you. So, yeah, just in general terms, I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on the design solution for all of these driveways on Hillsborough Street.
Sure. So the design solution is definitely collaborative between engineers with McAdams and the City of Raleigh and transportation staff. So we've thought through, met internally, met with the clients actually a few times over the past couple months, talking through these solutions, going back and forth, what would be the best outcome here. And ultimately, what is presented in front of you now is, again, a collaborative solution for the Hillsborough site.
Is there anything that you feel is still unresolved?
No.
Do you think this gives you the best possible outcome?
I do think it gives the best possible outcomes. It takes into consideration the long-range bike plan and essentially shifting the bike lanes from the street to the curb, having the protected parking. We liked how the overall frontage of the Hillsborough kind of slows down traffic, allows greater pedestrian visibility. It allows increased safety and visibility for bikes. And ultimately, it does take into consideration mitigating some of the challenges in terms of having multiple driveways on site and then having those conflict points with the pedestrians crossing. So I know that the client has going to produce a visual barrier or visual difference there for the driveway. There's going to be signage making them aware of pedestrians crossing. Again, we've had several meetings for the past couple months ironing out these situations, and I'm comfortable with this collaborative solution here.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to ask one question specifically about the spacing between proposed driveway 2 and proposed driveway 1. That's the 74 feet between the exit of the drop-off on Hillsborough and I guess that's a ramp up to deck parking.
I think is that a ramp up or ramp down?
It's a ramp down.
Ramp down. So I just wanted to me, I wanted to make sure that somewhere in the design process there was an exploration of an internal connection between the drop-off area. So you may go in the way it's designed, but did you all explore removing driveway 2 and connecting to driveway 1 or somewhere internally to remove that short space driveway?
Yes, we did explore that. In fact, initially, that was an initial part of the pushback from review comments. Ultimately, looking at the overall product here, that was not going to be feasible. And so in a way to work with our clients, we decided that, okay, we'll live with the additional connection back onto Hillsborough, but let's talk about ways to enhance the safety of pedestrians and visibility, making sure there's more awareness for drivers when they do access the site, when they access the site and leave the site, that there will be pedestrians and bikes potentially on the frontage there.
Was there consideration as part of that discussion on driveway 2 of having right turn only as you exit that?
Yes, there is. And I believe for driveway number 2, it still is right turn only. Is that correct? No? You thinking full access for driveway number 2?
I think
So driveway number 2, so the main use of the pull-off would be valet. So that movement largely would be connecting to the deck. So by use, that's the intent, is to wrap around into that ramp down here. Let me see my mouse. And we went away from the right turn lane only just to have full movement in the event that someone wanted to go eastbound Hillsborough.
So I guess that's what I'm trying to get at is if the intent of the valet of driveway 2 exit is to actually be internal to that parking deck, is there some way where you can do that internally instead of having to go back out on Hillsborough and go back in, if that's the primary intent? It sounds like you explored it, but I'm just trying to figure out what.
Yeah, we did explore it. We looked at a valet only lane to connect to the deck entrance, but balancing everything, it just wasn't feasible to get that movement to work and get your bike lane straight and then have a consistent traffic movement.
And that whole area between the bike lane and the face of the building is more or less sidewalk. Is that right?
Correct.
I'm probably going to speculate here a little bit, but I imagine that someone that's staying at this hotel is probably there for downtown purposes, right? You made those statements that this is not a product that's downtown right now.
That's right.
So it seems reasonable to me. While I understand the intent behind the valet use, that in scenarios where a vehicle is, maybe it's an occupant, hotel visitor, whatever it may be, someone that might be pulling out of that space is likely going left towards downtown, and which is why I bring up the concern that I see around that left-hand turn, considering the close driveway spacing that we've got on either side. So, if just confirming with transportation that they're okay with either option coming out of that driveway.
We did explore, we explored that option, looking to kind of manage and channelize that traffic coming out from the site, going into the loop. Ultimately, again, when we work through this process, we have come to a collaborative solution based on the site, the access in, and then also the external access from that site. So transportation at this point, we are comfortable with that.
Thank you.
Is the idea with this configuration that it potentially gets adopted beyond this site along Hillsborough Street and is consistently implemented? And yeah,
When you say configuration, you mean the switch of the bike lanes?
that's right, moving the bike lane behind the curb.
Yes. So the bike lane essentially is moving. We're swapping the existing parking and bike lane, and then extending the curb out where that former parking was at in the situation. So that is the plan for the remainder of the block on Hillsborough.
So to rephrase and ask that slightly differently, would that be seen as a positive from transportation's perspective if the entirety of the remainder of these Hillsborough Street blocks were to implement the same configuration?
Sure. So we've had internal meetings with our transportation staff, our bike staff, and we have met with Oaks and Spokes, and we've talked about this potential solution, and they're in favor of it. They're in support of it. Yes.
What about the adjacent property owners and businesses? What's their perspective?
We'll have to communicate with them on the proposed plan here. But ultimately, being that this is in the city right of way and Hillsborough Street is a part of a larger of the larger bike plan, the plan was to move the bike lanes to the curb in the future with the part of this plan.
One more clarifying question.
Sure.
On this site plan, it shows a right turn lane at the end of the property line to the west. Is that just conceptually there, and that in practice would be parallel parking, or would the intent there that would be entirely a right turn lane?
What is being proposed there is actually being striped out. That portion there, it will be loading. It will not be a right turn only lane. And so vehicles will turn from that center lane along Hillsborough traveling westbound.
Okay, so where the right turn arrow is being thought of for a little, are we talking about?
I think we're talking different places.
Yeah, I clarified. I think he's talking about something else. In front of Taverna Agora,
Yes.
that's going to be striped out?
Yes. Yes.
That is what I'm talking about. So what's on the site plan is slightly out of date.
Yes,
In
sir.
that
That is
sense.
correct.
Okay.
That is correct. There is another rendering that the client will submit that will include that portion being striped out.
So that's loading for this property?
They'll be loading for the frontage of those properties there, not for this particular property. There's loading on site, there's parking on site, and additionally there's loading on the backside on Edenton. So again, we're thinking about for this particular site, this is the hotel on the frontage, but also the residential component on the rear. And so there will be loading and parking on the rear on Edenton, as well as the parking entrance on Edenton.
If you can do it, but if not, Keegan, can you scroll up just a smidge so we can see the Edenton side? Okay, and so the Edenton side in this site plan is proposed to be residential drop-off and then mixed-use commercial loading zone?
Is the other property to the west, 400H, I think is what it is. Are they going to have the
I think
configuration?
they're down a block.
What's that?
I think they're down a half a block or
Oh,
so.
okay.
But it is very nearby. Yes.
Are they going to have that same configuration that we're switching to here for the bike lane?
I'm not
or-
certain. I'm not reviewing that project.
Okay, interesting.
I think based off of the previous comment, it would be the next block and under this current configuration,
You
unless
have to
that's
cross
not correct.
Harrington. Yes. I believe 400H is on across from Harrington.
Current configuration is in bike lane between the travel and
And the
parking.
parking.
Yeah.
So it would flip.
If that's wrong, you let us know, but that's what I would interpret.
I'm sorry. What's the question?
We're just confirming that 400H, which is another current development, is implementing the current configuration versus this configuration.
That's a great question. I don't have that answer right now, but again, 'cause I didn't review that particular project. Sure. You wanna-
Yeah, if you could come up and state your name, I'll swear you in.
Yeah, Bradley Kimbrell, Department of Transportation, City of Raleigh.
Thanks, Bradley. And do you affirm or testify that the testimony you will give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
So Edenton is a state-maintained road. So DOT has been involved in some of these conversations, but not the most recent. So 400H, to your point, is proposed to go back in as it is today. With this site plan, it allows us to consider an alternative because they're adjusting the traffic flow, or at least proposing to adjust the traffic flow in westbound Edenton, starting at this intersection with Dawson. That does create an opportunity for the adjacent parcels with Taverna Agora, but also downstream, so 400H. So with this, we see this potentially as the first domino that could lead to additional enhancements.
Sorry, I've got a lot of questions. On Edenton Street, I see that it's necking down to 2 lanes on the north side in order to create that bump in. It's really the curb bumping out, I guess, from the current configuration. Would that recapture curb space along the rest of the block frontage for what's kind of being proposed for what is the travel lane now to the west of the proposed site?
Correct. That's part of the detail that we're working with DOT on. There's still some analysis to provide to DOT to ultimately approve that request. But essentially that bump out allows for a shorter pedestrian crossing there at Dawson and Edenton, which is one of the goals. By establishing that parking lane that's shown hatched out in this image, we can begin to set up for parking along this block face, and then potentially long-term extend beyond. But again, that'll be coordination with DOT on how that's accomplished.
Okay, and just to follow up on what you just said, has DOT approved necking it down to 2 lanes?
Not at this time. The analysis, as the applicant said, this is very new, very recent, and the analysis has not been provided to DOT at this time.
Switching gears a little. To this driveway on Edenton that is 38 feet wide. I saw the turn diagram in your presentation. Looked like it was a trash truck. Looked like it had the ability to come in front ways, make its maneuvering, and exit front ways. But then I see on this plan there's a loading dock. Is to the plan south. Is that intended for tractor trailers to back into it?
It is not. We're not asking for trucks to back up into the public right away.
Okay. Can we go back to that turning diagram then?
Let's see, how can we?
Right. Testing the applicant's ability to use technology. Thanks. I guess looking at this, it just looked like there was a little extra wiggle room in the diagram. So 32 feet is the maximum by the UDO, and you're widening it to 38. And I'm just wondering if there's any ability to put it on a little bit of a diet and tighten it up a little bit. Or does that start to create an issue with the parking and the loading?
Well, I think we definitely studied this quite a bit, and I think that when you allow for the access to the parking ramp to be straight, and the walls are perpendicular to each other and such, and just really the templates are good, but giving a little wiggle room is certainly desirable when you're talking about being up against hard structure.
That's fair. And then I guess I'd have the question for Marcus. Do you have any heartburn over the width of this driveway?
I don't have any heartburn at all, no.
Okay. Any other questions on this driveway group?
So vehicles are meant to go further south into that parking loading,
Yes.
but those vehicles would be the same size as this turn template or smaller
They would be smaller. They would be passenger vehicles.
into the loading dock.
And into the parking deck.
Yeah, certainly.
So they can turn around and leave forward, face forward.
Well, we're talking about two different vehicles there. I heard you saying other vehicles.
I'm just thinking if I'm trying to figure out what the vehicle is going into the parking loading that don't have a turn template on it further south. Yeah, thank you. Yes, yeah. So I'm just trying to imagine a turning scenario with whatever vehicle is supposed to use that.
Understand.
Andy?
So you're looking at the parking loading spot right there.
Yeah, that leads down to the dock.
Trying to figure out how that was envisioned to be used and with what kind of vehicles and how they would get in and out of it.
So the delivery size truck, FedEx truck that you see in the template is really going to be backing up to the loading dock, which is where the template is kind of aiming at it. And that passenger loading spot, per se, is that truck doesn't work in there. You can't get it into it. So that would be more for like a passenger side vehicle to be able to pull in and back out into the loading dock area, which needs a much smaller turning radius.
So it's for like move-ins and move-outs, or?
Yeah, somebody's minivan or, maybe a Ford F-150 or such, but that's about it.
Okay. Thank you.
The other question that I've got for, and I'm not sure who the answer or who this question is for, and it may be Catherine. So if we agree to give relief on cross access, does that preclude future development to the west from getting access to the site?
I would actually probably defer that to transportation.
Okay.
With respect to I can say that this project, for as long as it's tied to the site plan approval, the design alternate, so as long as they go forward with that plan, they would be, have a design alternate that doesn't require them to have cross access to that parcel. Now, with respect to what happens when that parcel develops, I would defer to staff.
Okay.
That's a great question. Given the nature and the context of this particular site at 300 Hillsborough, it would be challenging to have cross access now along these sites. So if I were to review a plan coming in sometime in the future seeking cross access to this particular site plan, I think there may be some ways administratively to relieve them from that. But if not, then they would have to go through this process again. But I don't think cross access would be feasible in the future, given the context, given the walls there. There's just no way, there's nothing to cross access into.
Yeah, and I guess that is a little bit of part of my concern, because we're going to have two driveways that are right next to each other. And while I recognize now That's kind of the back loading area for Taverna Agora. It's not always going to be that. And if they don't combine those two properties to the west, then you've got this sliver of a property that's going to have to maintain that driveway immediately adjacent to this one. And then is that going to cause an issue later on? Whereas if you did have cross access and both properties could come into this one driveway to access that property, it would take traffic off the street and it would make it a safer condition. And so you're saying if somebody did redevelop that property, the Taverna Agora property to the west, wanted to get access, I know it would be difficult because of the way the ramps work right here, but it seems like there might be a slight chance that they could do it on that very north end, that would be taken care of with the future development request?
Yes, that is correct. It would be taken care of with the future development request. However, if they want to cross access immediately to the site, where we know they're going to have their walls for their structure, I just can't approve that.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I'd be worried. Just I'm guessing that those squares on the plan on that plan west wall are columns.
So this seems like something we're going to run into quite a bit. I think. Are there any examples so far, to your knowledge, where there is cross-access between structural components on adjacent lots in Raleigh?
I can't think of any. Bradley, can you think of any? I thought about. I can't think of any.
The parking structure around Edison and excuse me, sorry, Blunt and Martin, the development there, the parking structure was built intentionally to then provide cross-access ultimately for the developments that occurred on either side.
And those didn't happen in parallel. Those developments didn't happen in parallel.
Plan to establish that deck that would then serve those adjacent towers.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that exists today?
Correct.
Yeah. The connection exists, or just the...
I do believe so.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. And to Mince's point, if the cross-access to this site is waived, the requirement is waived, then this site would not be required to dedicate the easements that would ultimately be available to the adjacent property.
Gotcha.
That's right. And so when that property comes in with an application, the code would apply to them the same as this, and they would be required to meet that requirement by offering cross-access or go through the design alternate process as is today.
Huh. Can somebody point to, maybe on this plan, maybe on another plan, where the ramping actually starts to occur?
So this is probably the best view of that, and I'll note
Yeah.
that the bright yellow highlighted area, those are the transfer beams, so it would be very difficult to kind of punch an access way through that area.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions?
I got a couple more questions for the applicant. Where in relation to the site plan is the public-facing retail being proposed?
Have to go back quite a bit farther. This is probably the best view. So to the right of that drop-off is the restaurant location that would occupy that whole corner of Dawson and Hillsborough. There's also a small area between driveways 1 and 2.
Okay, so on the west side of the Hillsborough Street frontage.
Correct.
But then not anywhere else on the frontage of the site of Dawson and Edenton.
So on that side of the building, it would not. That's sort of the residential and the loading area and where the kitchen is.
Okay. And I think it was said earlier that the existing,
Apologies, we have a correction from the engineers. Which direction?
Site plan, either the old one or this one.
On Eaton?
Yeah.
Oh, on the other presentation.
Yeah, where's that?
Oh, that's a different presentation.
Keegan, can you help them get the other site plan up?
Keegan, could you pull up the site plan? Yeah, so the excuse me, the restaurant is sitting here, so Hillsborough, Dawson, Eatonton. The restaurant sits here. There's a retail space here, and I believe one of this space here is retail as well.
Okay, and the two along Hillsborough Street, their entrances would be on Hillsborough Street?
Correct. Yep.
And then I think you said this earlier, but the existing street trees there, none of them are able to be retained in this configuration.
Yeah, so we're working through that, and looking at the health of those trees, but also right now they sit in the proposed sidewalk. So that is yet to be determined whether those will stay or need to be removed.
And you might not be able to commit to this at this point, but if you were going to have to replace them, what caliber of tree would you replace them with?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that. I know. I bet you Adam knows that.
One more question, probably for Ms. Stewart. Could you go back to the rendering that shows the inside of the drop off? Oh, sorry.
Alt tab.
Yeah, 24.
This one.
Okay, thanks. So as you go out that exit, there's a sign on the left-hand side. It looks like it says something along the lines of yield to pedestrians. Is that
Idea.
that's sort of the intent? That is there as a warning for vehicles pulling out, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Just as we look at this, if you're able to turn left out of this drop-off zone, I'm just thinking about how long you might have to wait to turn left. Is there a left turn lane? You're just going to be blocking the bike lane, I think, if you
Blocking the pedestrians, but
Yeah.
the bike lane, I think the stop sign's north of the bike lane.
It's before the bike lane.
It is.
That's
So
right.
you're okay.
But at 20 feet, you'd be blocking the entirety of the pedestrian walk.
Be blocking the pedestrian walk. And is there a left turn lane on the current plan to turn into?
I think it was mislabeled.
To turn into the entrance here. Off
If you were
of-
going to turn left out of this, are you turning into a travel lane or a turn lane?
Yeah, so if you're headed eastbound on Hillsborough, there's a left turn lane into the drop off, and then an eastbound lane on Hillsborough.
Can you pull up that side plan again?
Show a man how to fish.
Yeah, that's right. Just not, I can't.
Yeah, just using Alt tab.
Because this,
Which one did you need to go
That
to?
one there, site plan.
Turn arrow.
And how do I? So Adam, you're speaking turning out of here,
yeah, turn left out of there is what I'm.
left into a westbound lane. Or I'm sorry, I'm turning
left
around,
out of there.
turning
Yeah.
eastbound. So yes, there's a left turn lane into the pull off, and then a travel lane
So,
eastbound.
so if you wanted to pull out of there and go downtown, you're pulling into the travel lane, right? Not into that left turn lane, or maybe.
Correct. Yeah, the turn lane is intended for the hotel drop off. Dawson here is one lane southbound.
Okay. Thank you.
Is the proposed valet drop-off pretty comparable to the existing facilities in place?
Comparable in what way?
Size, spacing.
Do we have a spacing for the existing? Those are closer in terms of along the frontage, I believe.
There's an image. Out of there. Oh, how did we get back to that? You go ahead.
It's probably close.
Shift tab. All right. Show.
The existing.
Oh, that is for cross access, which comes toward the end. There you go.
I don't really need to answer that question if it's,
Okay.
They come out
or a specific.
here.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know the distance for those. I do know they are. So can we go out to the existing site? So the hotel sits on one parcel, and then to the east of it, there's another parcel. So the existing drop off is, as are shown in green here, are on the west side of our proposed lot.
Okay, so the drop off is shifting a little bit to the east.
Yep. Yeah, that's correct. And then in the existing condition here, what you're not seeing off the east side of this screen is the existing parking lot. And there's another driveway connection for that as well.
Okay. I think the last two questions from me, just on, well, I think you said this, but the valet passenger drop off is integral to the concept in terms of having it be off street and covered, and was on street studied at all. And
In depth. That was the starting place. Certainly was the initial request from staff. We looked very hard at that model.
and beyond the business model reason, were there any other reasons why that was infeasible?
Yeah, so there were a few, and I will actually invite Jonathan to address that as well. But I understand that there were concerns not only with its impact on the future possibilities for the bike lane location, but also with stacking for events. Was there?
Yeah, I think that sums up. Just wasn't feasible for the level of use that's intended here.
Okay, I got another question. For the applicant, going back to the brick dithering, the lattice work, is the image that you showed, is that exactly how you're proposing it to be, one uniform color like that? Or is there any ability to aesthetically treat that with materials or color? And maybe my fellow commissioners have feelings about that, so I'm just asking.
I was surprised that you would even, show that level of material. Oftentimes at this stage we don't get that. I mean, I appreciated the level of detail, and now it gets scrutiny.
Because you provided it. That's right. No good deed goes unpunished.
That's
Do you
right.
know the answer to that?
Yeah, I think this is a very detailed description. We are certainly open to suggestions, but early on in the design and this level of detail is, the intent here was to open this up visually for traffic.
And I'll say I do very much appreciate the attention to detail that you're showing this, that you're trying to create transparency in a way that carries the design. And yes, I'm not trying to punish you for showing the extra detail here.
On the record, I'm not going to pretend to be an architect either.
Any other questions from the commissioners?
Okay, this is my last question for staff. Has this kind of new composition design here shown up in any of our guiding planning documents related to downtown or street manual yet, or is this kind of the forefront of its implementation in the downtown context?
In regard to the bike lane.
Yeah, so just a comment that was made previously of this now being kind of the ideal configuration, and so is that supported by our existing planning, comprehensive plan, guidance documents for the city, or is this kind of the forefront of that?
Sure. So as it relates to the parking protected solutions that we're seeing, we felt like this was an application due to the spacing proposed with some of these access points and how sight distance would be affected by some of these elements. The parking itself, as we saw in the site plan, was omitted. So we felt like to achieve the parking protected solutions, this is in the direction that we're going. I think we're going to continue to see more of these in the downtown, and as we implement our new cross sections that utilize the bike path a little bit different than what we were seeing a year or so ago, we're going to continue to fit these in the mixed use context.
Okay, and just to clarify, this has not shown up yet in any downtown planning documents
Correct.
of behind the curve guidance.
This is the first that we've been able to get to this point, this level of detail.
And the 400H, I just want to clarify, on Hillsborough, the 400H frontage doesn't have this, what is being proposed here, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
400H came through with our prior cross sections, and we retained the bike lane as it was before the construction.
Between the travel lane and the parking?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? All right, anything further from the applicant?
Thank you.
And staff, anything further from y'all? Keegan, you good?
So actually, I just want to confirm that the left turn out of the driveway to with the left turn lane, that transportation is fully okay with what we see on the new site plan here.
I guess I'm
It's
at a
on the
different
other
screen.
plan. Keegan?
Yeah, there it is. We're gonna zoom in.
Yeah, if you zoom into the main entrance there. So if you imagine someone turning left out of the driveway to, yeah, that driveway, they'll cross the travel lane, the bike lane, the street yard, the travel lane, the left turn lane, and into the eastbound travel lane.
Yes, that's a
It's just a big move.
It's a big maneuver. It is, and definitely applaud you all for asking really great questions. Really appreciate that.
I guess this is showing right turn only because it's got two solid bars on it. You'd have to be crossing the solid bars in the left turn lane. Is that right?
You see two solid bars where?
Right there, yeah.
Here, dedicated left in.
So that's showing right out. Right, no left.
I'm completely missing it.
Is that right?
You talking with the dedicated line here?
Just in terms of the paint
Yeah.
telling you where to go.
Yeah.
That's just the delineation. That's not a double.
It
Yeah,
feels a
that's
little bit like we
double
are.
yellow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And this is the existing condition. It's a double turn lane. The center lane here is a double turn lane. So it is improving that condition
Okay.
from the existing.
Thanks. But just wanted to clarify because that's not what. This is kind of new information. Just want to make sure y'all are on board with that.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Going once, going twice. Okay, hearing no additional questions or presentation of relevant facts, the commission will now close the hearing and bring the matter to the table. As a reminder, the commission is tasked with deciding if, based on evidence presented, this proposal meets the applicable standards. This decision cannot be based on personal preference of commission members. Rather, it is based on standards and evidence. If based on its deliberations, the commission requires additional evidence, the commission will reopen the hearing.
I'll jump in first. I think there are a number of pieces of this that I'm very comfortable with and willing to approve today. I do feel like there are a number of things that seem like they're still up in the air, which would be kind of nice to have set in stone a bit more of, or set in the plans in front of us a bit, just to be able to, there's a lot of moving pieces. So, particularly around the bicycle facilities and the driveways 2 and 3. But as far as driveway 1 and transparency,
Yeah.
I'm pretty comfortable with those
I
elements.
agree.
And as
anything
well as
about
the
driveway
cross
4?
access.
Anything about driveway 4?
Which one's 4?
The one up on the north?
I'm good with 4 as well.
Okay. And I know you have to leave in a moment too, Will.
Say the same thing about 4. I mean, I can appreciate that they clearly put the emphasis on moving that driveway away from the more heavily traveled Dawson Street.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's a one-way street, so I feel like you don't have nearly as much going on that street.
Yeah, yeah. And to the point of the driveway width, I think I appreciated the comment of having a little bit of that buffer there in the width, considering you may have, left turn, adjacent to a FedEx or box truck.
Yeah.
In there, so offering a little bit of that buffer for turning radius.
I do appreciate Chris's point, though, about that there's going to be another busy driveway there right next to that in the future. And how do we deal with that, whether it's this case or in future ones?
And if it's going to be in a future one, then we'd need to address that as part of this case to have the easement set in place for them to actually connect through later on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that would be like structure to structure, internal.
I could see there being concerns from a building owner standpoint of having that connectivity through a structure to adjacent property. I don't know what all the legal ramifications of that are, but I could see there being concern, unless it's something that's specifically planned for.
There's that, and then the happenstance that the one spot that might actually be able to connect on this project would work out with whatever the future design is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was interesting to hear that there is precedent for it. But I think it was planned, it sounds like.
Yeah.
I'll make another comment on bicycle lane, behind the curb, which I got to a little bit there at the end. I'm a little uncomfortable making this sizable of urban design shift without a little bit more thinking around how this gets implemented to what is a very significant street in the character of Raleigh, of Hillsborough Street. So I'm not necessarily opposed to the behind the curb bicycle lane, but just acting on this particular site and then seeing that design implemented and understanding how that would get implemented and contextually what that would look and feel like.
Well, I certainly appreciate the fact that Oaks and Spokes was involved and the city bike ped folks were involved, and to hear that they're in support of it is helpful. I agree it's kind of a big first move. I think it's safer for bikes. I think that driveways are not safer for bikes, but yeah.
Just the number of driveways or
Yeah.
how they operate?
Yeah. I think mostly I would just struggle with the driveway 2, left turn on a driveway 2, with the information that we've been provided.
Adam, to the point where you can see with some more information that would be an acceptable solution, or that you're just not going to be able to get behind a, right or left out?
I could get behind, as they're showing on this, I could get behind a right out. But the city transportation sounds like they're okay with either, so it's, yeah.
Yeah, personally, hearing from transportation that they were
Yeah.
involved
Mhm.
all along and have come up with what they believe is the best solution
Mhm.
gives me some comfort,
Yeah.
except that's also not my particular area of expertise.
Uh-huh.
Would that be? Yeah, I guess I admittedly am not totally comfortable with it either, but would lean on the expertise of transportation. Is that something that we would even be able to consider as part of this request?
A ride out.
A ride out only.
Yeah, I wonder.
I mean, it's not. I think what we're talking about is the spacing, not necessarily another transportation issue that may allow us to make that request.
I don't necessarily want to delay this, but I do feel like there are a number of elements here that are still seemingly being figured out.
Agreed. Yeah.
Will, can you expand on that? What other things you'd like to see more information on?
It seems like they're still figuring out the green space that's occupying what is the on-street
street yard.
parking. Seems like the traffic flow, there might be some elements there that are still being figured out, like just in terms of what's in front of us, and that was admitted now, but might still be slightly out of date with what's current.
Yeah. I think a plan. I mean, this plan kind of opens up some, answers some questions, but also leaves some still open as far as I can.
There's still the
at
open DOT question, which I'm actually not. If that were the only element, I'd be comfortable moving forward. But there are other elements that are still yet determined as well.
And I do think it would be helpful to see a landscape plan the next time too, to see where those street trees land in the sidewalk, streetscape, bike area. Because I have a feeling that those trees are going to be right in the view shed of people trying to pull out of those exits, or that exit number 2, if they're at that stop sign behind the bike lane.
Yeah.
I'd add, if there's any ability to maintain any of the existing trees, that would be.
Yeah, it's a really important, urban structural element is the oak trees along Hillsborough Street, and it would be a shame to break that line just for this entry.
And then I mean, certainly if we could have more clear information on this, on the from the transportation perspective on Hillsborough Street, I think that would be really helpful.
Right. To that note, at least in terms of what I was asking about, I'd kind of like a affirmative from staff that we're more or less kind of adopting this as the preferred implementation. If other sites along Hillsborough Street, essentially between here and between the Capitol and we'll call it the railroad corridor, if that's the preferred from a planning perspective.
Which it's unfortunate that 400H is going to use the current setup. It's brand new development, and they still have the ability to change.
And multiple developments along the southern side of the street would also potentially be able to implement this if that's the preferred.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Keegan, can you maybe put up the design alternate findings for the ones related to the driveway spacing, cross-access, and driveway width? I think it's the same for all those, just so y'all have those in front of you when you're... There you go. That seems to be the one that's most applicable to what you guys are talking about.
So I'm just looking through the all of the requests that were made. So the first 3 are related to driveway spacing, and distance between driveway and an intersection. Number 4 is the alternate to the maximum 32-foot width driveway for number 4, which I'm comfortable with. I don't know if there needs to be any other conversation on that. 5 was for relief from the cross-access requirement. 6 was related to the transparency on Edenton Street. 7's again driveway spacing. 8 driveway spacing. 9 driveway, and 10 driveway. I would almost think that, because I think we can approve some of these tonight to get them out of the way.
Catherine, are we able to split under the quasi-judicial?
Well, here's what I'd recommend is that I don't think I've ever seen somebody split where you vote on some of them. I think what you could do is ask the applicant and give them, say that, would you want us to vote tonight, knowing that, we have these concerns, or would you like to continue and come back,
Yeah.
Can we continue part of it and vote on some of these?
I've never seen that done. I guess in theory you
Okay.
could. I don't know if the applicant would even want that to be
Yeah,
done.
it's not a lot of value, probably.
Okay.
Because if they need all of them to proceed, it's not like it gives them any extra, helps them at all. But I would ask the applicant what they would want to do tonight.
Okay, very good. Well, let's open the hearing back up then. And Ms. Stewart, if you could comment on that, if you'd like us to take a vote tonight or continue to another time.
Absolutely, and I think that answer depends a little bit. I'm working to make a list of exactly what is still open and what we're looking for, what information is missing, and so that will inform that answer a little bit. And so one thing I've heard is uncertainty about the bike lane above the curb. I would like to note nothing about the request that we've made would require that one way or the other. That's something being worked out with staff, and that is the current status of where that conversation is, but that's sort of being handled at the administrative level. It does obviously that is part of the discussion as far as that driveway spacing that we are looking for. But whether it would be approved or not wouldn't necessarily impact the location of that bike path. So I would like clarity on that, as well as what the request is with respect to the green space and how it relates to driveway spacing, as well as the traffic flow request. Those are the ones I think I've heard. Let me know if I've missed something here.
Yeah. So let me maybe say your first point in maybe a less diplomatic way. Which one of these requests allows us to take the location of that bike lane into consideration?
So nothing about what you're.
The driveway spacing?
I think she's saying it wouldn't, though.
It wouldn't be binding on the bike lane location.
Unless
we
I think
made it
that's
a
what I'm
condition,
hearing.
which is possible. We could make that a condition if there were a request. Currently, it's being handled at administrative level, but it could be something that we could offer if that's the request.
Safety is a consideration as part of driveway spacing, so I think it's all part of
Yeah.
a holistic system.
That's what I was going to say. Number 2.
Yeah.
And just having a landscape plan that we can see exactly where the tree plantings are along that street, because that also plays into safety.
And what is of
sightlines.
interest there? Is it about sight distance? What is the?
For me, it's sight lines.
Sightlines, yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're saving the existing ones, then you know that they're going to be there, or if you're planting new ones, we can imagine exactly where they are and see where the sightlines are with all the driveways and consider how that may interact with the bike lane and pedestrians.
Okay. And on the, I'm sorry, back to the bike lane. What was the request on that one?
I think you were just wanting to know more information. I mean, I'll let you speak. You're here.
I'm not gonna. Unfortunately, I don't think I'll be able to provide too much additional clarity. This is more directed at staff in terms of just getting a slightly more affirmative answer in terms of endorsing that design as the contextual solution.
So you're looking for a position from staff.
I'm not asking you for that necessarily. No.
Okay.
Clear as mud.
I think I've heard we were looking for a landscape plan with sight lines along Hillsborough.
Yeah, and a site plan that reflects the driveway to movements, the movements out of driveway to clearly.
And what are you looking to see in that? What?
Well, the current site plan doesn't show the left turn out of it, so I'd like to see that and how that would work.
One moment. I would like to confer with the engineers for a moment. We may have that.
Yeah, we don't have that diagram, but if we're comfortable making that a right turn lane only.
Oh, okay.
I don't think that's an issue.
Nice.
If that would, address some of these.
Yeah, that would.
Yeah.
That made me feel better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would help as far as safety, which is one of the findings, especially for cars backing up, waiting to turn left, and then blocking the bike path.
Yeah, because if they're turning right, they're just going to move
They're gonna
quickly
go,
out of there. Yeah. That would
But
certainly,
that concession's not gonna clear up all of our concerns, right?
well, it clears up the biggest one I had.
What, is that not for you?
Oh, look at that.
I mean, I still think a landscape plan showing those street trees and sight lines is gonna be helpful.
We do have a plan that does show that. We do know the location because we've established where the bike lane is.
Uh-huh.
We've established where the, sidewalk is. And so the street trees are established. We do know where that is. We have a graphic that shows it. So do you want to, you pulled this up for a reason? Do you want to go through that first?
What's this presentation from? Is this a,
Was this on the presentation?
It's not.
Right, so this was here in case of questions, which it sounds like we've reached.
ah,
And,
Okay.
I think that's something helpful for Jonathan here.
Yeah.
So yes, as far as the street tree location, from our plans that we keep toggling back and forth to, the existing the existing curb is on the between the bike. It's right along the edge of the bike path. So that's like an established thing. And now the existing trees are in that same location, and we're going to try and save them, but you got to do all kinds of analysis to make sure that they're savable. But if they're not, we're going to plant new trees in there, so that we do know the horizontal position of them, and they'll be meeting all the site distance requirements of being limbed up to, no obstacles between 2 and 8 feet and such. So site distance should be. There's nothing. I'm not sure what else. We know its horizontal location. We know about what trees we're going to put in there to meet the shade tree requirement at the proper spacing of 40 feet on center and such. So I guess what I'm asking is that enough to satisfy your questions related to trees and safety and site distance?
it begins to address them, yes. I guess the other part is probably something that you don't have control over, which is the arrangement of the bike lane and the planted area being flipped from the configuration that it is now. Because what I see in that rendering that you were just on a few moments ago,
Yeah.
if you're stopped at that stop sign pulling out of that drop-off area, those trees are going to block your view. And if those trees block your view, you're going to inch past that stop sign and you're going to roll up to the curb, and then your car is going to be sitting across where the bike lane is. And you're going to be sitting there until you can pull out. So it just doesn't seem to work or work well. But my guess is that the configuration of having the stop sign where it is, the bike lane, and the planting area is more a directive of the city staff, transportation staff. Is that correct?
It was like a collaborative effort of, working together and arriving at that solution.
I think the right out only, though, does address that to a
Does help
degree.
it quite a bit, because then people.
It would make it a lot quicker. Yep.
I've just heard clarification as well, and I invite staff to confirm it. But so site distance is controlled under the UDO. It's something that's always reviewed, nothing especially different here, and it's also assisted by the lack of on-street parking at this location.
And can transportation staff comment on if the trees, those street trees, were taken into consideration for site distance or site views?
Usually we have a site plan with trees on it. I think that's why we're struggling.
Yeah, and being able to
Usually we
see
get to see it.
And does the
sightlines.
driveway spacing not, part of the Raleigh street design manual, which then also addresses street cross-section and transition from different cross-sections?
That's a good question. I'll answer that question first. Site distance triangles. So street trees are considered in essentially the equation for a site distance triangle. Essentially, there's always a note attached to the plan, and the applicant should know that no obstructions from 2 feet to 8 feet in respect to your tree so that you can actually see in and around that tree. So that's how sight distance accounts for street trees.
So the trunk of the tree can be in the sight distance triangle, but it needs to be limbed up.
Yes. And then the next question regarding the change in street section and driveways. That's a good question. What was the specific question?
Just in terms of, relating the request for relief from the street spacing in terms of its connection to the street design manual and street cross-section.
Typically, we don't see a change in street section from intersection to intersection. So usually if there's an intersection, then a driveway, it's relative to the actual right-of-way cross-section of that street. So I think I heard you saying if we're looking at different street sections. So that's not an instance that we see, because between intersection and intersection, we maintain the same street section. Does that make sense?
It does, though.
Does it answer your question?
Yeah, it does answer my question, and it does make sense, though visibly, clearly, the cross-section is changing, even if it's not in terms of what's being proposed. I'm good.
Was that a question or a comment?
Both, but I'm good.
Any other questions before we close it back again? Ms. Stewart, looked like you had a comment to make.
Yes, thank you. Just in my quest for clarity. So we've discussed the site plan and the landscape issue. Just to clarify, we're not asking for any deviation from the street tree requirements that the city applies universally. And so those are something that we're bound by, including the site distance.
Okay.
Are there any outstanding requests for information that have not yet been provided?
Is there anything else, Will, that you want to hear from transportation about the bike path?
I don't think so.
If I may, apologies. So to Mintz's point, the UDO cannot be applied to require the improvements beyond the frontage. So with this particular site plan that we saw, they are establishing the parking protected within their frontage limits. And a little bit of the plan showed a transition west of the site. Anything beyond their frontage is a voluntary offer by the applicant to create the smooth transitions.
Like in front of Second Empire and Taverna Agora.
Correct. But the UDO would not be able to require that.
Understood. I was just trying to establish that it's all interrelated to the request.
Absolutely. Great point. Travelers, bikes, peds, they're not going to travel a block face or just a frontage in its entirety. They're going to continue down a network. Completely agree with that.
All right, so we're going to close the hearing again, bring it back to the table for deliberation.
Keegan, can you put those findings back up, please?
Yeah, so.
I want to make sure we're getting recentered.
Yeah, and I guess I'm going to comment that from those clarifying questions and comments, and hearing the desire of the city to have the cross-section that they've ended up with, it's been collaborative, they've worked together, transportation staff is comfortable with everything that's been designed. I'm not sure that I need any more information at this point, so
Yeah.
Are there any other comments either for or against that?
It changed, it means a lot to me to have the right out only on that, because I think that changes so much of the dynamics between the cars and the pedestrians on that exit. So
Agreed.
I think if they're willing to have that as a condition of approval, that's a big step for me.
Yep, me too.
Just in terms of where I am, I still think there are elements of this that I wish were more determinate in terms of the submitted plans, and there still being things that are being worked out related to this.
Will, I don't know if you want to expand on that at all. Is there anything that would affect what we're seeing on the screen as far as the findings related to blocks, lots, and access? Or anything, we could also flip to the street design manual findings too. I'm not sure if there's anything different there.
Yeah, I guess my hang-up is on relief related to driveways 2 and 3.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not it's reasonable without further clarity of the details.
As in the driveways 2 and 3 may increase congestion or compromise safety because of the way they're designed.
Yes, thank you for articulating that for me. But that's just me exclusively. There are other commission members.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, yeah, there's a lot there, right? With three access points within what, virtually half a block,
Yep.
more or less, plus or minus. I think for me, it sounds like there has been a pretty collaborative process between transportation and the bike department and the developer, that they've reached what we feel like is the safest option. It sounded like from transportation, they felt like it likely relieves some of that stacking that may occur if you did a street loading right there. Get some of that off of the street. It creates other challenges with the more frequent interaction with the bike lane there. But I think you'd have that. You're going to have that same with the street loading anyway.
Street loading, or even the fact that there's 3 driveways. One is in only, one is out only, and we're going to request it be right out only, which should move traffic along quicker. And the third is for valet.
Yeah.
That are going to be familiar with traffic and know what's going on the block.
Only amendment I would make to that would be just street access valet would not compromise pedestrian safety the way that these driveways would.
Because they're not crossing the pedestrian band.
Say that again, Will?
In terms of just what was said in terms of safety,
Yeah.
the 2 driveways do affect pedestrian because there's the pedestrian conflict
Sure.
that occurs there.
Yep. And I'll reiterate that I don't have any other issues with any of the other requests that have been made related to spacing between intersections and the driveways, the width of the driveway number 4, the cross access. So it really is, I think, just these driveway spacing requests. And I think hearing what I have from staff and the applicant, I'm actually comfortable if we made a motion and then added the right turn out only from number 2
Condition.
as a condition.
Can we ask them if they're just confirmed with you all? Can we open it up just to confirm? You have to.
Yeah, let's open it back up and just confirm with Ms. Stewart that y'all would be comfortable with adding the right out only on driveway number 2 as a condition.
We agree to the right out on driveway number 2.
Okay, very good. All right, let's close it again for deliberation.
I would make that motion with the condition as described.
All
I
right,
forgot about that.
motion made, second?
Do you want me to read the condition into the record? Let's
Yes,
do that real quick.
please.
Here's what I've typed up. Y'all tell me if this sounds right. The egress driveway for the internal drop-off area for hotel guests along the property's frontage to Hillsborough Street, labeled as proposed driveway number 2 on the applicant's site plan sheet E-1, shall be a right-out only driveway.
Correct.
Very good. We had a second by Kyle. Any other discussion?
Are we approving all of these at the same time?
Is that your motion? That's the way I took it.
That is the, I just want to make sure that that's clear. I didn't say it.
Yeah, and the condition applies to all of the
All of
motions to
that.
approve with them, with that, yeah, okay,
If that's amenable, I think that's fine.
yeah, all right.
Okay. Any other discussion?
I'm going to vote against
Mhm.
2 and 3. I'm fine with doing the motion for all of them at once, but just stating that those are the 2 that I'm specifically.
Okay.
Okay.
I guess.
And we'll take it all as one for the moment. So all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say no.
Nay.
And the motion passes
I think 8-1.
8-1. All right. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you for coming before us. Let's see.
They didn't need all 9 to pass, correct?
They did not need, they just needed 5 to pass. So this will be formalized when the meeting minutes get published and approved. So thank you all.
Thank you all.
All right. Moving on to other business, we have the meeting minutes to approve. Those are the meeting minutes from June 2nd. Is that right? Hold tight, I'm bringing them up. Yeah, the minutes from June 2nd. And if you have anyone has had a chance to review those and wants to make a motion to approve them. I have reviewed them, and he was not. Yeah. And I'll make a motion to approve them.
Second.
Second by Adam. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, and that passes. Thank you. Thanks, Will. Next up, Sir Walter Raleigh Awards discussion. I believe Casey had something she wanted to bring us up to speed on with that.
Yes, I just want to give you a quick update that the call for nominations the call for nominations is live on the city website. We have requested the email blast, the GovDeliver email, to go out hopefully on Monday or early next week. And I plan to send y'all an email tomorrow with some language and information that you can use to spread the word about the call for nominations, so you have something to use. We're trying to see about getting a flyer made. I think that was a suggestion from the last meeting. With the holidays and everything and illnesses, people have been out of the office. So we're working on trying to get that for you as well. But at least tomorrow I'll get you the language and information and the links and everything so you can spread that word.
Katie has a template one that would be super easy for her to, if you can get a hold of her, I bet it would take her like 10 minutes.
Yep. We're coordinating right now to try to make that happen.
I just didn't want like a new one to get made.
Sure. And then the other thing I just wanted to let you know and ask a couple questions about the call for artists. We're planning to have that open up hopefully early next week. We're working on that language and information to be distributed soon. But I was looking at some of the information that we used last go round, obviously as a model for what to do this time. And I just want to confirm a couple of things. So the call for artists is pretty detailed about what y'all are looking for that certificate. Things like designs have to be 8.5 by 14 and portrait orientation, things and like what materials it can be. So I just wanted to make sure that is still what you guys are looking for, or did you want to change the parameters of what that certificate design might be? Did you want to open it up to be more open-ended, or
well,
I want to get your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say generally the award is an 8.5 by 11 in a frame. And that's always been the way it is. I don't see a reason to change it, but I also don't necessarily see a reason it has to be that, other than ease of printing and and handing out. What do y'all think?
You said it's 8.5 by 14, is that what it?
That's what was used last go-round, is my understanding. So, I mean, we could make it 8.5 by 11.
I don't know. I
But
don't know why those are on there.
Yeah, I mean, either.
8.5 by 14 seems like
it's
a
like the legal
odd
size sheet.
size.
Oh,
I
it's
think.
a legal sheet. Yeah, I mean, I assume I don't want to like undo something that someone thoughtfully did.
Yeah.
That I just don't know about.
But it does seem restrictive. It almost seems like you'd want to take out that requirement and just let them know that it's a portrait, it's in portrait,
Sure.
on
Yeah.
the award certificate.
Standard size, I don't know. A standard
Okay.
printer's size?
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. We can kind of
Yeah.
leave the general parameters about that
Okay.
the same since they've worked in the past.
Mhm.
Just want to make sure there wasn't any other thoughts that y'all might have.
Well, one thought I have is in the call, can we give them some examples of past awards so they have an idea of generally what we're talking about?
Yeah, I don't see why we could do that. I'll double check that that'll be okay with our communications department.
That'll
but I
probably
don't
get
see
the
why not.
message across of what, what the aesthetic is or the general format. And did we decide if we're doing a call and then a narrowing and then, or
For the artists.
because we've done it where we like have folks submit and then we pay the winners get paid some small amount or something and then the final one makes it, or
Yeah, that was actually going to be my next question. That it looks like that's how it was done last go around, that there was narrowed down to maybe the top 3 submittals, and then based on that, you guys made a decision to select one of those 3. I wanted to confirm whether or not that's what you wanted to do this time, or if you want to do something different.
I don't know if we have time for that.
I think it just depends on the number. We may only get 3 back.
Yeah,
And we
yeah.
just want to pick from that. So
Sure.
let's
Because I
just-
think the initial call calls for just providing some portfolio examples and then narrowing it down to the top 3 or the top 2 or however many you want to do. And then asking them to provide proposed designs and then selecting from those. So if
That's
you want to
right.
I just want to make sure that you guys want to keep that process, or if you want to do something different.
It's a good process because you can get quite a few people that you're not asking for much if they just give you a portfolio. But then when you ask them to actually make something that we can look at, I feel like that's a pretty big ask. They should probably get something for that. And we gave them,
I think there was some,
$200 or something.
like a small stipend for the top 3, or whoever you select to be sort of the finalist, and then a larger award for the selected artist.
That's worked well in the past. My only question is, do we have time to do that?
It's going to be tight, but I think we built it in so that there would be some time to do that. I think the plan was for the calls to close at the beginning of August, with maybe, we gave ourselves like a week to
Yeah.
potentially extend them if we need to.
Okay.
But I think we'd have to select the final design probably at the second meeting in August. So
Oh, that seems like we don't have enough time.
we
Yeah.
might be running into a time crunch of being able to look at the options to narrow them down and then give the artist time to come up with a design.
If we need to have a finished design to vote on, I think we should probably do a call for artists with with their portfolios and just pick a artist and hope that they make something we like. I don't know. What do you guys think? That's a little risky. But
You're going to get more applicants than if you were to ask for sketches or a design, though.
for
And
sure.
I think the last time, we didn't even have enough artists. I don't know if we had any artists.
Yeah,
and
last
we
time.
ended up extending it by a week or 2, so we got more. And how many total
it
submissions
was
did we
like
get?
3 or
I think
I was gonna
last
say it
year
was
was
either-
3.
and only 2
3.
of them were really reasonable
Yeah.
or something. I remember it being small, but then when I looked at them, it was really only 1 or 2 options.
So I agree. I think we just have a call based on portfolio. When we get the portfolios in, maybe we can make a decision then. Hopefully we can make a decision then. But
Yeah.
if we don't feel comfortable, then we can revisit the whole timeline and ask if we could get, at that point, we could give them a stipend and ask them for additional work.
And we can kind of just wing it and see if we need that. Is that reasonable?
Yeah, I think I'll get back with the team that was involved last year to see if the timeline can accommodate narrowing it down, if we have the options to do that. And if not, it sounds like there's some comfort with going based off of the portfolios and having them design something from there. I don't know if you, Keegan, have any recollection of how that worked last time or not.
I don't. I think we had a similar discussion in one of the previous meetings, and I think there was some consensus to just kind of move with the more expedited version, either asking for a direct submittal or maybe going off a portfolio. I think there's a lot of time built in for them to quote unquote like finalize the design and then get them printed, like on the sort of the back end once it's already selected. And obviously like the actual awards and in final format aren't needed until the actual, until the ceremony. So there's a fair amount of time built in.
We might have some room in like September to.
Yeah. And the only other thing I can think is if you wanted to select someone based on a portfolio and then potentially have them come back with the design and then maybe iterate off of it or like revise it.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best way is select from a portfolio one person and then work with them. Maybe they do several iterations, but at least we're just working with one person instead of a group. And
ask them for 3 samples of work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that may generate more interest from prospective artists, but then also give you more control over the final product.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. I think those were the questions that I wanted to just touch base with you guys on. I don't really have an update on the legacy project right now. Things are kind of just moving along. So, yeah, if you guys have any questions that myself or Keegan might be able to answer, let me know.
Okay, great. Adam, did you have anything else on Sir Walter?
That's all I got.
All right, moving on to report of the commission's attorney, Catherine.
No, nothing to report. Next QJ meeting, you'll have outside counsel for, and he's going to do, Tom Johnson will be here for all the cases.
Okay.
So, because I think you had 2, but now I think you have at least 2 more that were continued.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So.
Okay, very good. Then the report of the chair and the vice chair. So this week, I presented the annual report from last year and then the work plan for our fiscal year 2023 to the council. It was very brief, 5 minutes. But I think it went well, hit on all the high points. But one of the biggest things that I brought up to them was that we don't have the ability to review cases in any capacity before they come to us as far as a design alternate goes. So we don't have the ability to look at their presentations ahead of time, give them feedback on what else could be useful, be part of early sketch design sessions to really give them a good critique on the design. So where they might meet with staff ahead of time, staff is going to look at things from a very black and white, does this fit within the UDO, and not really critique design. So my point to them was I think that we're now missing that from the process, the city process, and that we're not able to do that. Mayor asked if we, knowing that we've only got 9 members of our 15 that vote on cases, had we talked about that? We said yes, that we'd been advised that even the alternate members not be involved with any cases ahead of time in case they're called on to vote on cases. So ultimately, the mayor made a motion that got approved to approve our report and our work plan for next year. And then she asked city staff to create a subcommittee or figure out what the makeup of that would look like to fill that gap, to be able to have design professionals that are not city staff that can come in, work with developers and designers to give them honest feedback. And my suggestion was maybe it is some past appearance commission members that are still interested in giving service. And so I think at this point that's out of our hands. I think this is now in the city staff's hands. Casey, I don't know if you can comment on that at all. Like, I don't know if that now falls down to Pat Young or somebody else within the department to figure out how we go about creating that subcommittee.
I very briefly chatted with Pat Young, our director, on this, and it was basically a quick conversation saying that we're going to explore this and talk further about it. So it is on staff's radar to try to figure out a way to obviously not violate the QJ responsibilities of the commission or the quasi-judicial responsibilities of the commission, and see what options there are to create subcommittee or whatever it might be to provide that early design review and feedback.
Yeah, and so I don't even think it would be tied to the appearance commission anymore, right? It would be somehow tied to the planning department aside from the appearance commission. And I think past appearance commission members would be good people to approach. I think planning board members, I'm not really too familiar with board of adjustment, but basically any of those design professionals that sit on the other boards that can give unbiased, raw feedback to developers and not worry about having to get their hands slapped. So all in all, I think it was a good presentation and good response from council.
Thanks for doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for all your input. And that's all I've got to report on. Any other business before we adjourn?
I just wanted to make a housekeeping note that if it's not obvious already, Casey will be the principal liaison to the commission moving forward. So you might see me on text change related matters. And of course, if you ever have questions related to EDO, I'm happy to try and assist, but Casey will be the point person, obviously. And I imagine we will be working closely as text changes come up that we think the Appearance Commission should, have visibility on, or we want to solicit feedback from you all on. And then I just had one other really minor housekeeping note, but related to the work plan and annual report. I think I mentioned that there's some discussion of consolidating all the boards and commissions and committees in some manner in terms of how they report and get their work plans approved. And so you may see some shift in the next year. I can't promise that, but there's some discussion because it's just a hodgepodge right now. There's some talk of it even being a consolidated event where every board and commission comes and does their presentation at one time. So there can be collaboration, and it just kind of, instead of taking up council time. Just wanted to put that on your radar. It might change. My assumption is that you'll most likely still be on this fiscal year schedule because that's what most do. So I think that new shift is probably going to stay permanent, but like how you report to the council might change in the next year because they're trying to get us all sort of following the same protocol.
Makes sense. Okay. Keegan, thank you for everything that you've done for us over the past, how many months has it been? 9, 12, something like that?
I think this is the start of month 7, so.
7. Yeah, but right.
Yeah. No, it's
but
been really
we really appreciate everything that you've done. You've worked really hard and appreciate all the input and what you've done for us. So Marcus said he was going to take you out for beers after if you can go. So.
Well, yeah, thank you all.
Because I sponsored the alcohol in Raleigh. Yeah.
That's right.
No, I've had a good time being able to assist with the commission. It's definitely opened me up to a lot of different things that you all do and just general exposure that all the different boards and commissions and committees that the city has. It's kind of mind-boggling the amount of work that goes on. And as I said, I hope to continue to be involved, and I think this group has a lot to offer that we can engage on, especially with the work that I do around the UDO and regulations. So thanks.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. And we look forward to working more with Casey. Glad to have you on board. Yep. Yes, Marcus.
Does anybody know what happened with the text change on parking deck screening?
Keegan, are you still here?
Yeah, I can answer that. So it is actually still at committee, being text change committee, which is part of the planning commission.
Yep. They
They are set to discuss it next, the first Tuesday in August is what they've scheduled for a special meeting of that committee. If anyone wants to attend it, you're obviously more than welcome. I know Chris has had some communication with the chair, Blaney Miller. They're certainly welcome other feedback. They do have a few more than a few. I think they're overrepresented in terms of number of architects on the committee. Not a bad way, but just saying they have a lot of expertise in this area. Although I don't know if any of them specifically deal with parking structures. I guess just from what you all saw, they are moving in the direction of a more relaxed screening standard outside of specific areas. So outside of the downtown area zoned for a certain story limit. And potentially urban frontages, which is a special zoning designation. So outside of the more urbanized context, it'd probably be a more relaxed standard than what you all first saw, but they're still trying to figure out the details there.
Okay. Is that revised text available online?
Not yet. It won't probably be available until closer to the meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Casey, could you help us track that in Keegan's absence?
Yeah, I can definitely work with Keegan to keep you guys up to date. If I forget, or feel free to email me if you're wondering where it's at, and I will follow up with you and let you know where we're at.
Yeah, the August meeting is pretty jam-packed. It's possible. Yeah, I mean the August Appearance Commission meeting, I know has a fair amount of cases. But yeah, if you're looking to view the draft ordinance, it would be available no later than the 28th of July, and then the meeting again would be on August 2nd. And my assumption, it's possible it gets voted out that day. I feel like it probably will hang around at least one more meeting because they'll probably request revisions and want to see them before they vote it fully out.
Great, thank you. Anything else? All right, gang, thank you. Meeting adjourned.
All right.
Appreciate y'all being here tonight.